Yes.
Anyway, Kenny in Elk Grove, how are you?
Hi, Matt. First, the only time I got to talk to you was way back on episode 721, and you and that's just a gay show.
What's that?
You're cutting out.
Oh, I'm sorry. We had a pretty nice. Let me get off my. Okay, is this better?
So far.
A little bit, yeah.
Okay, well, I'm in my home office. Last time we had a bit of a problem with this.
Okay.
Oh, you're fine now.
Okay, good. Anyway, Beth was on your program. You guys were engaged, and I didn't know that's who that was, and I wasn't watching this on my screen, so I want to congratulate you on your marriage. It's a bit of a late congratulations, but I think that's great.
Thanks. You want to say thanks, honey? She's nodding and waving.
She's waving. I'm doing her crocheting.
Anyway, you and I discussed the authorship of Gospels. We had a bit of a tizzy, and you hung up on me. I hadn't been able to get you on the phone since.
Okay, well, you got me today. I won't promise that I won't hang up.
I'm changing the subject today. I want to talk about science.
Okay.
Science.
So why would... all right, go ahead. I'm always curious when people call in to talk about science, because you do realize this is a public access TV show, and neither one of us are actually scientists, so it's kind of...
Well, you guys do talk about creation, evolution, controversy a lot.
Well, only one of those two is science, but yes, we do talk about those.
Well,
anyway, what's your question?
Okay, well, basically, there's a scientist named Paul Ramdor, German scientist, Ramdohr, and he was the chief mineralogist at the University of Heidelberg in Germany and head of the petrology department there.
Okay.
And he wrote the standard international work on the microscopic study of minerals called the ore minerals and their intergrowths. And he wrote this paper on radioactive fracturing. And it was later reviewed by Bob Gentry because he identified radioactive minerals being in the rock due to radio halos, and so he wanted Bob Gentry to look at his samples and read his paper and give his opinion. And so I talked to Bob Gentry on the phone in the 1990s when I was debating creation and evolution on the Prodigy Online service. I'm one of the reasons why they closed that service down, because of all the extensive writing we did on the bulletin boards there.
Well, that's a good feather in your cap.
The atheist evolutionists, we pretty much closed it down.
Oh, you did, huh?
Yeah. We wrote so much that they couldn't handle it, and they had to shut down.
Yeah, bandwidth was kind of a thing back then.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
And anyway, this paper he wrote was put in English by Oak Ridge National Lab in 1965. And his specialty is microscopic studies, and he noticed this fracturing no one was commenting on because it's kind of odd. When radioactive elements decay in a rock, they exert an internal pressure that causes fracturing on the inside when the mineral reaches a point of expansion it can't handle it anymore. And where they expand, by prediction, is at grain boundaries and the, let's see what's called that, grain boundaries and the cohesion.
Okay. Is this the C decay argument? Or a different thing?
No,
okay.
this is
no,
something you have never
that's
heard
speed of light.
of.
I'm sorry. Okay. Keep
Well,
going.
I've heard of this halo stuff before, but I'm trying to figure out what you're getting to, and can we get to it quicker?
Okay, well, they predicted that that's where the fracturing should be, is the grain boundaries cohesion minimums. That's not where we find it. Instead, we find random isotropic fracturing indicative of accelerated pressure due to accelerated decay. So this is a fingerprint that these rocks are remnant of accelerated radioactive decay. The minerals isotopes we're talking about in the minerals are thorium-232, uranium-238.
Yeah, okay, so what conclusion do you think all this supports?
Well, things aren't as old as radioactive decay indicates because it was accelerated in the past.
Okay, and why do you think? And why do you think that that's the case?
Because
mean, 'cause
that's
you
the
could-
interpretation of Paul Randor.
Okay.
Yes.
And there isn't any alternative since the paper was published.
Why do you think that the scientific community doesn't agree with you?
The scientific community hasn't given an opinion in 50 years on this. They don't have an alternative.
Well, I mean,
You don't think so?
No, I think it's
radiometric dating isn't tied to just one type of decay. There's a number of them, and they're also tested and confirmed by things other than radiometric dating. So there's this interdisciplinary process that confirms the reliability, which none of it's 100% reliable, but confirms the reliability of these things. And so I don't know, if this guy produced a paper that shows this is all unreliable, why hasn't this changed anything about the way we do science?
Well, he wanted the same thing when he wrote this paper because he reviewed prior literature that had the same photograph, same phenomenon. Mm-hmm. And they didn't answer his paper after he wrote it.
Well, have you spoken to geologists, physicists, other people in the proper scientific disciplines? Have you asked them these questions? I mean, why are you calling an atheist program? I mean, I understand it's an interesting. It's a topic that you think we'd be interested in, but again, our position is going to be, whatever it is that Paul Randor has written and whatever conclusions he's reached, they do not appear to be conclusions that the scientific consensus, that the working professionals in the field, tend to agree with on the whole. And scientists can make mistakes. They can. Papers, even peer-reviewed papers, can be incorrect. And the best that you could say, I would think, about Randor's conclusions would be that if they led to new approaches to this field of study, for example, if they added some meaningfully to either the the field of geology, or if they opened up new paths of inquiry that led to, if what he wrote had predictive power, like if his conclusions in his paper led to accurate predictions that other scientists could make in terms of what you would or would not be likely to find, then that would be one thing. But that I know of, being layman, his conclusions don't seem to be the ones that are held by scientific consensus.
More than that, I mean, they haven't demonstrated any predictive power such that they would be adopted. But even more than that, let's assume that you're completely right and that radiometric dating is inaccurate, which would be about the most we could say if that conclusion was correct, right?
Yeah. Sure. Yeah. But I do have a
so Kenny, that was a yes/no, so I could ask this. If all we could really say is that it's unreliable, we haven't done anything, not one thing, to demonstrate that the dates are wrong or that your proposed dates are right. At most, you've just demonstrated that you've got an unreliable tape measure.
Well, to answer the question that was later asked by Martin sitting next to you there, James Fingebaum, University of Chicago physicist, doing his PhD dissertation on the hydrogen atom. This was given to him on the Prodigy Online service as part of my debate.
You're talking about a scientific paper from 60 years ago and an online discussion on a service that hasn't been active in 20. So
we're not exactly at the cutting edge of the field here.
I don't know exactly what you're proposing or how you're what it is that you think you can demonstrate.
Well, these rocks are on every continent of the planet.
Well, yeah, but I mean, what?
And obviously, we had a accelerated radioactive decay event. I mean, how do you measure the accelerated radioactive decay of the potassium argon melt?
I just explained to you that at most what you're saying is that we do not have a reliable tape measure, and yet somehow you think that you are able to accurately measure absent a reliable tape measure. Because you're Kenny, because you're a young Earth creationist, correct?
Sure.
And so, despite the fact that young Earth creationism is, I mean, it's even disregarded by some of the most, ardent fundamentalists as nonsense that doesn't stand up to anything. You think that you're justified in your young Earth position because you found a paper that hasn't gained any scientific traction that seems to imply that some radiometric dating may not be accurate. And this is sufficient to justify young Earth creationism?
See, this is the kind of thing that unfortunately we see coming from the creationist camp quite a lot, which is this cherry picking of data. You'll find a paper or a discussion or one particular scientist who published or wrote or said something sometimes decades in the past, as Randor has done, and you'll say, "Here, this is it," and you'll wave that around as being the thing that settles the issue, when it's not. It's cherry picking of data, and there is. I think that if you look around to find, instead of finding that the scientific consensus has no alternatives to Randor's conclusions or no other explanations for things, you may very well find that stuff is out there. If you weren't just laser focused on the thing that seems to support the conclusion that you've already come to, which is that we have a young Earth.
This is exactly the sort of thing that happens when people say, "Oh, I'm going to go poke holes in evolution, and that's going to prove creationism." No, it won't. It won't. I mean, you could find out tomorrow that everything we understand about evolutionary theory is wrong. Poke holes in all of it so that the whole thing crumbles. You haven't done anything to demonstrate the truth of creationism. And finding, even if this was a legitimate hole in radiometric dating processes, even poking that hole does not confirm your young Earth creationist hypothesis.
Anyway.
Well, that's nice, but
I think it's great.
Yeah,
but
when a paper's out there for 50 years, it becomes science.
No.
Error, fail, wrong.
You have failed, and I'm kicking you back to remediate science 101.
Yes.
The length of time that an idea has been out there has no bearing on whether or not it's true, and especially when you're pointing to a paper that's been submitted and rejected, just because it hasn't been rejected. How much more can it be rejected?
Yeah.
I mean, should we wait another 50 years with it still not being accepted, and now it's really, really science? Come on now.
So you don't believe that there's a possibility that since about 1940s, and this paper was first published in Germany in the late 1950s, that maybe there was a little bias against papers against radioactive dating since it became the absolute dating method back then?
So basically, you took
Kenny.
Basically, you just took my response, which had nothing to do with whether or not there was bias or error or anything else, and turned it into an accusation that I don't accept your conspiracy theory that scientists are out to shut down proof of creationism.
Well, you've heard of. Let's see.
Weren't we just talking about conspiracy theories?
Yeah.
Weren't we just that?
Have you heard of Steve Austin of the Institute of Creation Research?
The only Steve Austin I know is a WWE guy. Lives around here.
And the $6 million man.
Steve Austin's a well-known creationist. He's head of the geology department at ICR.
Okay.
That fine
ICR, the people who couldn't get accredited?
Well, hang on a minute. He's got a PhD from Penn State, and he wrote a paper that passed peer review.
And what
3 times.
Okay.
But it was
the
never
published
published
Kenny,
because he was Steve Austin.
Huh? Whoa.
You want me to tell you what the paper was?
Oh,
Kenny,
back to this.
Kenny, you simultaneously just said that he was peer-reviewed 3 times but never published. How the hell does that happen?
Yeah.
Where did this peer review
happen?
Where does this peer review occur if it's not a published paper?
Well, if they told him that they would publish a paper and then change their mind later from an editor...
so it wasn't peer reviewed.
Maybe because it didn't withstand peer review.
So any publisher can refuse to publish a paper,
Yes.
even if it passed
And if
peer
it doesn't
review.
get published, then it didn't get peer reviewed.
Or it didn't withstand peer review.
No. It was peer reviewed 3 times, and they didn't publish it, and wrote him a letter saying, "We will never publish your paper."
Maybe because it's crap. Maybe because it wasn't scientifically sound. Maybe because when he submitted it for peer review, it got reviewed and it didn't withstand the peer review. That's how peer review works. That's how peer review
Kenny,
works.
I can go right.
Peer review is not a rubber stamp of instantaneous approval.
Yeah, and it doesn't
Review is review.
Yeah, it doesn't mean that your paper's worth a damn. And even if it receives good reviews and glowing stuff, doesn't mean it becomes instantly science. I could go write something right now and submit it for review and have it rejected over and over and over again. That doesn't mean there's a conspiracy against me or my idea, and it doesn't mean that my stuff becomes science. What's that?
Let me help you a little bit on this.
What?
This was a paper on geological, paleontological evidence in the Nautiloid Canyon adjacent to the Grand Canyon. The leading expert on those fossils in the world is Steve Austin. There's about 1 billion of these cigar-shaped Nautiloid fossils in that area.
Kenny, what's your point?
Orientated to one current direction in the red wall
Kenny.
limestone that covers all of North America.
Kenny.
It's evidence for a flood. That's why they didn't publish it.
Oh, right. Oh, I see. We're suppressing. Back to conspiracy theories again.
Thanks for calling, Kenny.
There's a mathematician that published in a journal for years and years and years.
Hey, Kenny,
they rejected his paper after they told him in letter they would publish it.
Yeah,
he sued them and got $30,000.
Yeah, and you know what? They're not always perfect. You know, there's a biologist that somebody sent me an email the other day about. They've had this idea that disproves Darwinian evolution with a hybridization theory that they just have had a really difficult time publishing too. And so I submitted to some actual biologist who said that the science in there was 50 to 60 years out of date and that it shouldn't have been published because it's nonsense. I'm sorry that your pet theories don't meet scientific scrutiny, but that doesn't mean that there's a conspiracy. The only conspiracy is to not allow junk science into science.
No, the National Science Foundation is just run by atheists. There's no conspiracy.
Well, see, it's not run by atheists. The elite of the elite among scientists tend to be non-religious because they've actually exercised their critical thinking skills to evaluate the claims of religion and decided that they don't withstand those. That, though, does not mean that they then have constructed conspiracy to keep down your religious views. Do you not understand what would happen within the scientific community if intelligent design or creationism could actually demonstrate the truth of what they would claim? I mean, you're talking about tons and tons of money, Nobel Prizes, Templeton Prizes. Where's the Templeton Prize for these guys, by the way? Templeton's already on your side. They're not even taken seriously by any science group, and they're handing money out left and right. And yet...
Well, what about the Templeton Prize to the physicists that discovered that there's an outside influence on the universe?
Yeah, I just said the Templeton Foundation is not considered a scientific organization. They have an agenda.
Oh, I see. Sorry. Yeah. I didn't hear it on the phone right.
Yeah. Anyway, thanks for calling, Kenny.
I thought Eugenie Scott, Executive Director of the National Science Foundation, was an atheist.
Eugenie Scott is a non-believer.
But Kenneth Miller, who is one of the world's leading evolutionary biologists,
is a Catholic.
Is a believer. So religious belief or bias has no bearing on what it is that a working scientist discovers about science.
But anyway, none of this makes any difference.
Should not have a bearing.
None of this makes any difference. You're a young Earth creationist, and you are convinced that there's some conspiracy to keep out the evidence supporting young Earth creationism. I'm not. I don't know what else we can say.
Well, if you're going to say on your program that creationists publish in their own literature because they can't publish in the scientific literature.
Yeah.
And they turn around when there's evidence given that they're not allowed to.
No.
Again, that's false. That's the sob story that they try to sell the gullible public.
Yeah, when you go out and create your own...
Randall's not even a creationist, and there's nothing wrong with his paper.
Kenny, when you go out and create your own journals because you can't get into reputable ones, that tells us a lot about what you're proposing.
Yeah.
Now, you can spin that as a conspiracy that all the reputable scientists and all the reputable scientific journals have somehow gotten together and decided, no. All these people who are offering what some people would call junk science, we're going to shut them down. And it's just nonsense.
And this is a common refrain, right? And the whole conspiracy thing, it was the central theme of that stupid movie Expelled. It was it's the central theme among conspiracy theorists in other areas, people who believe in the Illuminati and rubbish like this. This whole idea that, oh, well, the mainstream, they actually do know the truth, but because some agenda that they have to stay in power or whatever it is, they have to suppress the truth. So whenever some bold, truth-seeking, real scientist comes along and presents the evidence for, God or young Earth or a flood or what have you, it's immediately suppressed because we cannot. It's utter rubbish. But of course, it plays to people who have spent their lives not learning how to think critically and watching things like X-Files, and it's a really great emotional appeal because suddenly you can sell yourself as being the underdog or the victim of the bullies, and but it's all rubbish, really. The simple fact is that if there were evidence for a young Earth that was solid, anybody could present it, the scientific community would check it out. Scientists change their minds about things all the time. I mean, we're constantly changing our minds about what we think we know about the universe. I mean, recently it was discovered that the universe expanding at a much, not only at a much faster rate than we originally thought, but it's actually accelerating. That's interesting. Don't really know the cause of that. Science is all about learning new and amazing and bizarre and strange things. They love that. They're not like, oh, we found a new and amazing and bizarre and strange thing. Let's pretend it doesn't exist because we're really comfortable here. Yeah, that's just not how they work.
The age of the universe, by the way, is not contingent on the radiometric dating that you're talking about. Those things are in the timescales related to Earth. The fact that the universe is 13.7 billion years old and that we can get it down to a really fairly precise number. You're suggesting that it's 6,000 to 10,000 years old. There's several orders of magnitude difference between those two. It's young Earth, a young universe is one of the most laughably ridiculous concepts in the face of the actual evidence that we have, which is why even answers in Genesis, who are bizarrely goofy in their creationist beliefs, don't advocate for it.
So, anyway.
But thanks, Kenny.
Yeah, we're going to have to move on now, but thanks a lot. Take care.
Okay, bye-bye.
Well, I think he took that very well.
Well, that's all right.